thanks for joining us on Women Lead TV. I'm so excited for you. I have such an amazing guest. And before I get into that, let me tell you who I am. My name is Marcy Bro. I'm a personal branding photographer, and I love to talk with women about their brands and their journeys in business. And ladies, this one is for you. If you have any struggle around charging what you are worth or really stepping into your value, you are going to want to listen to what Samantha Hartley has to say. So, before I introduce Samantha Hartley, let me just tell you that she's one of my favorite people. She's got a vibrant podcast and she's an educator on all things coaching women to really bring the value out into the world. So, strap in and let's get going. Samantha, hi, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to see your face. Will you do me the pleasure? And if someone hasn't met you yet, would you introduce yourself so we know what you're all about and how you help people in the world?
Yes, I'm Samantha Hartley, and I am a revenue generator and maximizer for women consultants. And I work with women consultants who basically are on the revenue roller coaster or who feel like they've hit a revenue ceiling. They're kind of like maxed out, and I help them maximize and multiply their revenues, working with perfect clients so they build more profitable and joyful consulting businesses.
I love that. And I love that that just rolls off the tongue for you. And it feels like you just said it for the first time. So good job having that down. So tell us where in the world you're joining us from.
I am on Martha's Vineyard, which is an island off of Massachusetts.
I love it. And I also love that I know that you don't have that Massachusetts accent. You haven't dropped the word wicked or, anything like that yet. So, hey,
Martha's Vineyard. I could say Martha's Vineyard, which is how some
Martha's been.
Yes, I am not a native to here. I'm
I,
actually a Southern girl, and so I have
yes.
relocated.
Yes, and Southern girl. So that brings me to my first question. I know that when you were working for the Coca-Cola company, were you living in Atlanta where they're headquartered?
No, I was actually hired by the Coca-Cola company when I was a student turned marketing person in Moscow, Russia. I was working with an events company and a hotel that had like those like the catering department where you kind of
Yes.
like book meetings. So I worked in meetings and events for a local hotel and business center, and I did an event for the people from the local Coca-Cola bottling company. And one thing led to another, and I ended up working for them as the marketing manager in Moscow, Russia. So I had a territory of 30 million people and a budget of $12 million a year, and et cetera, et cetera. During the time I was there, we grew the business of sales of Coca-Cola from what was it, like 30 to 100 million. It was like this stratospheric growth. And so I always say that kind of spoiled me for wanting this transformational numbers. So I want to work with businesses that can double or triple or more. And that's why I do what I do.
And don't you feel that it's kind of the overused metaphor of that 4-minute mile? Like once you see that can be done and possible, it's so much easier for you to achieve it. On the same token, yes, Coca-Cola is probably one of the best recognized brands in the world. So there's also something, don't you think, Samantha, that what you are learning as a team member or an employee of big business also applies to these smaller businesses and solopreneurs too? Do you find that there's any crossover in, what you can bring to your clients from what you learned there?
Totally. And both things that you're talking about are really helpful. Like the 4-minute mile of like, I just saw somebody do something that I thought was impossible. And then now more and more people are doing it. And similarly, so a lot of my clients are like, what do you mean charging? When they first come to me, what do you mean charging $100,000 for a single engagement? What do you mean charging? And I have clients who are doing 300,000, 500,000, 600,000, a million. Yes, this is what people are charging for a single engagement. What would I have to do for that much? Okay, don't think about the doing. So because it's possible, once we hear about the 4-minute mile, we think, oh, okay, so it's possible. Now I want to learn how to do that. And then we go over to the other thing you're talking about, which is using the things that work for big businesses and bringing that kind of discipline and structure and effectiveness into a small business. And I think the hard thing to do is connect the dots. And the easy thing is like, once you know what it is, it's like, oh, okay, we can just use these same principles because they actually do apply to one-person businesses or small consultancies as well.
It's very true. And, if you're watching this or listening to this and you're hearing Samantha say things like you can charge $100,000 for a single engagement with a client and your ears are perking up, I want you to, after this is done, go and find Samantha. She's got a website and a podcast where all the podcasts are found. She talks about this consistently. So, Samantha might be your new best friend after this. So speaking of that, I had been listening. I've been a fan of yours for many years. We've met several years ago. So I really know that the hype of which you speak, you back up, because I think that sometimes in our space, there's people that are all hype and no meat. But I've met at least one of your clients, so I know you're the real deal. So what I want to talk to you about, Samantha, is something that you spend a lot of time in educating people on, is charging your value.
Mhm.
And, you really talk a lot about like some hard truths that us women need to learn. That might be a broad topic, but where do you want to take that queuing up that I just gave you?
Well, the first thing I want to say is I want to be very careful with our language here, because a lot of times people are like, "Well, I want to charge what I'm worth. I want to charge what I'm worth," and I'm like, "You are priceless. There is no dollar value that can go on you as a person." And so I think the first thing that's really hard is when we do associate those dollar values with us as a person, it feels bad. When people are like,
Mm.
"Money's not spiritual," I'm like, "No, we need to bring money away from our personhood, because you everything you deserve all the things in the world for your worth." And
Mm.
I want us to
Thank you
tell
thank you for that. Yes.
the littles as well as big people, you are priceless. Now,
Mm.
the services you provide are what you're selling. So when people are like, "I have trouble selling myself," you're not selling yourself, you're selling a service. Now bring that outside of yourself. Was it easier to sell Coca-Cola, and is it easier to sell any like widget that you might sell? Yes, because you can hand it to somebody and they can be like, "Oh, I want this," or "I don't want it." Services are intangible, and so it can be harder to sell them. Doesn't have to be, though. So how do you get paid for your value? Now, these hard
Mm.
truths, here are some hard things to say, is that you have to talk about what that value is. You have to get clear on what the value is yourself. And value, as I say, is like art. Or beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Mm.
So, what
Mm.
you think is beautiful, or what you think is artistic, and what you think is valuable, those are things that are inside your mind. So, I need to know the person who's buying my services, the economic buyer. And for my clients, a lot of times this is going to be like a person and a corporation. It can be like a business owner in your town. What do they think is valuable? Very often in the work that we're doing, the thing that is valuable is the outcome of the work that we as consultants do for them. So whether you're a coach or a consultant or any kind of business owner, you're bringing value to your clients and customers. And so what do they want to have? So if it's like, "Well, I help my clients with culture." Well, that's great. But the value of like a good culture is pretty abstract. Help them understand what's going to be happening in a culture that is a good culture, a working, healthy culture. Or I help my clients, the teams, to get along better. Great. What does that actually mean they're going to be able to be or do or have as a result of that? So a good culture or a functioning team, they're more effective. They come to work on time. They're happier. They're more engaged. They get things done. They help you move forward on your goals. So all of those things that I just named, we can put a dollar value on. Even when my clients are like, "But what I sell, it's more like executive coaching. It isn't necessarily, you can't necessarily put a dollar." Yes, you totally can. When you're coaching that executive, what is she able to do now that she wasn't able to do? And what's the value of that? Like even going home at 5 p.m. That has
Mm.
a value to her. Like, and what is that
Oof.
value? So that's the way that we're bringing the value thing. So if there's a hard truth, it's like you have to be clear on exactly what is valuable about what you're doing, and your answer isn't always the only answer to consider.
Mm, you really spoke to my heart when you were just talking about how sometimes the value isn't the monetary value, it's the lifestyle that, like helping the woman get out of the office or spend less time working, because I know many women struggle with that, and that is something that I recently started actually tracking as a metric in my own business, is how much of my values am I living, because I was so obsessed with how much I was bringing in every month and how much I was making every year. But really, once I started tracking the quality of my life, I can rest at ease when that dollar amount isn't like, I'm not making like $1 million a year. That's
Yeah.
okay because I know what my values are.
Yeah.
Um, so, really, you strike me, Samantha, as someone that could go toe to toe with the guys and, be in a room full of men and, really lean into that masculine energy when needed. However, you have chosen to really focus your messaging towards women. And I think from what I can tell, you work with mostly women, at least that's your marketing.
Mhm.
Why, as someone that can kind of, code switch to the
Mhm.
more feminine and more masculine, and I
Mhm.
hope you see that as a compliment because it's meant to be, um, why did you choose to work or target women in this field you're in?
I really started to shift around the Me Too movement because
Mm,
for years, it's always been easier for me in business to work with men. We all speak the same language. I know what we're going for. It's kind of like you were saying with the $1 million. Okay, we want $1 million. Let's do it. Lifestyle, we'll be fine.
yeah.
And then, um, I started in my own life and business cultivating more of the feminine because I started to feel the way in which that hypermasculine focus started to take a toll on me personally. So I did want to
Mm,
rest more. I did want to have more of a life. I did want to uh, be a different way. I saw it wasn't always as effective. I was very much a JFDI coach of like, yeah, get over yourself and just do it. How come you aren't doing the stuff that we talked about? Well,
yeah.
quit it, do it. And that wasn't necessarily getting, sometimes it would, but it wouldn't consistently get me results. And my number one value in work is effectiveness. And so if I'm not
Mm,
effective, then I'm going to take a different approach. So I would bring more feminine into my business, which would look at first like being curious, like how come that is hard? How come it's not happening?
mm,
Interesting. Well, what could we do that would support you more? And so I started bringing in more of a feminine approach in my actual work with clients and in my own life. And then I started to attract more women to work with me. It was almost always 50-50
mm,
before. And then at a certain point, like around the Me Too happenings, I thought, well, here's the deal. I can work with whoever I want to. Why don't I lift up the feminine? Because
mhm.
I think when women lead and when women win, everyone benefits. And that's not always the case the other direction.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
I think like you, like I'm never intending here to demonize the men. I am sometimes saying the masculine can be a little aggressive and in its extreme, it can be toxic. And so there's toxic femininity as well. We can talk about martyrdom and smothering and things like, yes, I get it. But what if we were more balanced in the way we were working? And like I said, I just choose to work with women consultants and women leaders at this time, women founders, because I think we're bringing in some really interesting ideas and they haven't been heard before. And as I said, if I can lift up anybody, like, why don't I lift up women right now?
I agree. And especially going back to I think that you are the perfect vehicle for that because you really can hold both of these sides of yourself equally. And I think that appeals to a lot of women. I'm just going to take a guess. I feel like that appeals to a lot of women because I personally see in you, just a sense of leadership and strength that I don't always see in myself. So I can imagine that if I was working with you, I feel like you would just really toe that line beautifully of balancing both.
Thank you.
And, and so, speaking of working with women, what are some common blocks or what are some areas that you find women come up against more often than perhaps a man would?
Women definitely have a sense of uh, oh, this gift? Like the thing I'm doing is unique. Oh, doesn't everybody
Mm,
do this? So a
yeah.
lot of times they're not aware of their unique strengths because women are used to being good at everything and having to be like adaptably be good at everything. And so really focusing in on the unique thing that you are amazing at is not always obvious. It's not always like the clear go-to thing. So they'll say, I always say it's kind of like this dress. Hey, I really like that dress on you. This old thing I've had on the, and
Yes.
so someone will do something, and I'll be like, yeah, that is your unique gift. That
Yes.
is so easy. Why? This is it, and I'm like, yeah, it's easy for you because it's your genius, and then we begin to be like, oh, okay, and so then we build the business around the thing that is her genius. But so often, and I mean, I've clients will come to me doing good money, 250, 500, 750, like lots and lots, but they won't be aware of that kind of a specific thing that is their gift. And then the kind of the thing that goes along with that is that they'll be doing too much in the business because they can. And so if I can take those two
Mm.
things and kind of like tease out, this is the thing that you're amazing at and you should definitely focus on and do. And like all of the rest of the stuff, you don't have any business doing, but it's so easy. No, 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 no. Right?
Mhm,
You're
mhm,
hyper
mhm.
capable. You're super capable. And so you could be doing all of these things, but you shouldn't.
I agree with so much of what you just said. So starting with the first part of what you just said, I find that a lot too when I'm working with women as a photographer. There's so many women that really don't truly, I think, see what makes them special. And they just need that coach or that person to bring that out. And then secondly, you really alluded to the concept of delegating or finding ways to really be the CEO of your business and your life. Because yes, I think as women, we're just so used to doing it all, and because we can do it all, we find it easier, faster, just do it ourselves. That is probably something that you bump up against a lot. Do you find yourself coaching your clients on how to outsource or find support?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And what's funny is, I have a podcast too, and I was just talking with my producer recently. I did a little series of best ofs where I kind of collected together my
Yes.
my previous episodes. Um, and the one that was about strategic visibility performed way, way better than everything else. And the one that was about team performed much less well than everything else. And I was like, what is that about? I think uh, most of my listeners, I would say, do not identify as having a team. Like they have a VA and they aspire to have more than that, but they don't really think of themselves as having a team. And what is the case is that very often I will come in, um, and one of two things will happen. I had a small consultancy. This is 3 women partners that I worked with, and they had an employee in their business. And one of the first things that I did was like, what does he do? And how much? That employee always got paid every single month, even if
Yeah.
it was a strain on them and the business. They wouldn't necessarily get paid, but the employee would. And it wasn't really clear what he was doing. So I'm not going to say I had him fired, but I helped everyone come to the decision that it wasn't serving anybody. So
I agree with that, yes.
sometimes I'll right size the business in that sense. Like they needed help, but not that. But I had another client come to me, and she has it's more of kind of an agency model, but she had a full time employee, and she was like really struggling with this person and was not sold on that this was working and all kinds of things like that. And what I helped her to do was realize you're not using this person to her full abilities, and you need to slow down and teach her things. Oh, teach her, ugh,
Mm.
and then support her in doing that stuff. Oh, I don't have time for that. I don't want to do that. I was like, if you do make that investment now, it'll pay off for you forever. So then, she now loves this employee and she's expanding her team. So I am very often helping my clients to figure out who they need in support around them, whether that's team members working for them or peers or subcontractors who can come in and help them. Last example I give is I have a client who is an executive coach and is working on growing the business and had kind of hit a ceiling in what she could charge. And I suggested she bring in some other coaches who could do the clients who want to be lower investment. And this is almost literally from one week to the next. No, I don't want to have other people in the business. I can't imagine how that would work. Like flash forward I think it was it may have been 1 or 2 weeks later, she already hired 2 people, just like an action taker like that. And the business is growing on the basis of that. So it can look like all kinds of things the way our team is going to look, but yeah, it's important to have.
Yeah, it is. And I love that even in my own business, I'll never forget the time when I had first started outsourcing, making Instagram reels to my assistant. Because reels would take me so long. And then I'll never forget, Samantha, being in line. It was Taco Tuesday in California. That's like a holiday here. So I was out to lunch with my husband, getting a taco on a Tuesday. And I look at my phone and my assistant had just sent me all these reels. And I look at Rick and I was like, this is worth every penny, because here I am standing in line, eating lunch,
Right.
not working on my business. And it's such a freedom, and that's such a small example, but it's a good way that people can like dip their toe in the water and get started. And I did listen to that podcast that you're referring to, where you talk about who makes up your team, and it got me thinking. I'm like, oh, I actually should consider these people in my business my team members. So the way that you really think about your business and the people in your team, and I met your your podcast producer Jackie, of course, when we did your photo shoot, and she just felt like she was a sister in arms. And clearly you're attracting the right people to you, not just as clients but also as team members. And I want to wrap up. I have one more question for you, and just really thinking about your team members. What is it that you appreciate and really look for when you're building your team?
Well, I have some clients who've been with me for 10 years, and I have team members who've been with me for over 10 years. So we say culture fit, but I want to work with people who love what they do. Like, they are extremely passionate about what they're doing. It gives them joy to do their work, and who are effective. I mentioned it earlier, like, people should be really good at the work. And when you have that combination in my clients, like, they too also should be really good at the work. I mean, if we find out, like, usually if something isn't that great, it's because it's the wrong fit client. And if somebody is a fit for my team, I mean, I've gone through people who, they worked for me, it didn't work out, and they don't work for me anymore. And sometimes it's like, I'm not the right fit client for them for whatever reason. So I just am a big believer in that, perfect fit. Exactly what I need is exactly what they do. And same thing with clients. Exactly what they need is exactly what I do. And that, looking for that kind of dispassionately, which is a masculine quality, but like really taking objectivity to it. And then if we build this structure around our people of, like, we all know how we work, we all know what we're working towards and for. And a hard truth is going to be, I think, a lot of women, and I'm saying this based on my clients and me, are squishy about this in the beginning when we first hire. You want to be extremely clear about the boundaries. What are we solving for? Like, what's the goal? What do we want to have happen? When do I want you available? All of these structural things. And if you do that, you don't even have to think about boundaries after that, because we know who they are. Women aren't going to encroach on your boundaries, and ever intentionally, ever. So it's just great. You get to have all this kind of, like, I like to say yes. Yes is my favorite word. I like to be able to say yes to everything. And I can do that if I have been extremely clear about my boundaries in advance. So that's my parting words on that.
I appreciate that because, what I've come to learn about you, Samantha, is you have this sneaky little spiritual side to you that you don't always present up front, but it's definitely there. And I know that your husband works in that space too.
Mhm.
So I personally resonate with your spiritual message just wrapped in this beautiful, capable, strong packaging that you have. And I don't think a lot of women have that. I think they're either one or the other. So I feel like your right fit clients find you because they need that. They need someone that's going to hold them accountable and tell them the hard truths, but also really deal with them from that feminine perspective. And cheers to just adding, building up more women in this world, because you're right. I do know that when we build up women, the world is a better place, and they turn around and they lift up women behind them. So it's really, we're just helping out the future generations when we do this. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart. Is there anything else that you feel in this very limited time we had that was left unsaid that you want to say about the work you're doing?
Well, I just want to say that it's what I think is really brilliant about you, Marcy, and what I think is the as a brand photographer, your ability to see people and to see their essence and then to make that visible in photographs is really it's just astonishing. I see a lot of people's headshots. I work with a lot of photographers. I've seen that before. And, one of the reasons I flew across the country to work with you and brought my client to you is because you see that. And I hear that in what you're saying. And I think, it's important for all of us as women to lift one another up and to look and see the essence of someone. And you should
Mhm.
be able to, we get an intuitive hit of that. So if you're in
Yeah.
tune with your own intuitive hits, then you're going to have that feel for someone. And I first, got that hit off of you when I saw you present in San Diego. And what I loved was you totally had your act together with all of the business stuff. And then you brought that kind of like, when I had an experience of working with you, I was like, oh, yes, she knows what to shoot, what my business needs are going to be. But then when someone sees your essence, like that's really special things. So I
Oh,
love
that's so
it.
kind. Thank you. I appreciate you taking that time to say that, and I take that and I receive that, and I think that is really important to what we are both doing. And I think that I know that I'm in a position to influence other women, and I know that you are too, and I take that role very seriously. So I feel like together, us and our tribe members, we are
Mhm.
really intentionally here to help women make the damn money and do the thing that they want to do to make the world a better place. So thank you for being a sister in arms. I appreciate you, Samantha. And
Thank
if
you.
you want to know more about Samantha, we've been linking all of her details below. And as always, thanks for watching. And I'll catch you next time on the next episode of Women Lead TV. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.